Thank you, Jeff. Well, now it's time for the man of the hour. I'm pulling this podium back because Guy has asked that we have a conversation. I'm going to invite Emily Green from the Americans for Prosperity to come forward and have a conversation with us where they're going to give us an analysis of what is coming and what to expect. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a fan of townhall.com. That's where I have gotten to know Guy Benson's work. Townhall.com was the only national media that ran stories about the challenge the auditors made to Sheriff Neese a few years ago. If you recall that, he was challenged on to reveal the names, addresses, and other contact information of concealed carry holders. And that was an issue that we worked on very hard to defeat in Perry County. One of the few times we got engaged in a policy matter. But the fact is, townhall.com was one of the leads to make that a national story. And it was through there that I got to see and hear and learn of Guy and his work. This is one very impressive guy, and this gentleman is the face of the new age of American conservatism. Ladies and gentlemen, Guy Benson.
So I'm just going to quickly thank you so much for that very kind introduction. In fact, I've grown to become more appreciative of kind introductions recently because I do the Gutfeld show a lot. I don't know how many of you watch Greg at night. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with how this show works, Greg's the host. There's four of us sitting in a circle for the full hour. We just talk about usually one big topic per segment. And at the top of the show, Greg Gutfeld does a whole monologue that he has prepared, and then he comes and introduces each of us one by one. And you have absolutely no idea what he's going to say about you, which is terrifying, because it's usually some sort of, maybe not an insult, but he's making fun of you somehow, and there's a camera zoomed in on your face as he says it about you. So, for example, here's one introduction he gave me somewhat recently, and this is quoting him. He said, "If he looked any younger, he'd be sitting in Kevin Spacey's lap." Fox News contributor Guy Benson. I don't know what to do with that, right? And so an introduction like that one, I can really cherish after going through the Gutfeld gauntlet on a regular basis, and I'm scheduled to be on early next week, so who knows what he has in store for me. The other thing that I'll say before we get to some great Q&A here is I'm just really proud to be here. I'm delighted to be here. I drove up an unbelievably beautiful drive from DC earlier, and just coming through these hills and the foliage. What a beautiful place you guys are blessed to live in, truly. And I'm really proud to be associated with Americans for Prosperity. They're a conservative group that does grassroots work that is desperately needed in places like Pennsylvania and in a lot of these crucial states. We were just talking about Wisconsin earlier. They've been consistently in principle, I should say, for years. They believe the things today that they believed and were espousing years ago. They're also pragmatic because you have to do that to win, and I'm a big believer in winning. So being here as your guest and their guest is an honor, and I hear this state is pretty important. I mean, I sit in D.C. and I go back and forth in New York, and everyone's talking about Pennsylvania, and I came here and be like, what do you think about Pennsylvania? I'm like, what do you think about Pennsylvania? You live here, you're on the ground. And I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to get overly bullish because that's not my nature. What I am hearing is far more encouraging about this state, this Commonwealth, than we heard 4 years ago. That's what I'm getting a sense of. That's what the data, we heard from the chairman, some of that data statewide. There are people doing a lot of very difficult and important work leading up to November 5th, and maybe later on we'll talk about getting over that hump in a place like Pennsylvania, but it seems like it's right there in a way that the Democrats are not feeling terribly confident right now, to the point that Jeffrey made. And I mean, that Politico story today was eye-opening. It seemed like advanced blame. It seemed like not recriminations, pre-criminations for what might be coming, which doesn't mean that it will happen magically. Just because they're backbiting each other already doesn't mean they're actually going to lose, right? They have a machine. They can absolutely still win. They can absolutely still win. But they are not feeling good about it. And I think trying to confirm those fears is the job of everyone in that room. This room, the room I was in earlier, to turn their nightmare into a reality. Because you're on the precipice of doing it. And I don't think it's even arguable. The most important state in the country on this question is yours. So it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of responsibility, but what an honor. Right? There's a lot of people who believe the same things that we believe, living all over the country in places that are lopsidedly one way or another. And they're going to do their duty and all of that, but they don't have the opportunity to flip the election. Quite possibly, like you all do. What an opportunity. All right, let's do a little Q&A, a little conversation, and then we can say goodnight.
Well, thank you guys so much for being in Pennsylvania. And I have to say, too, I am not surprised to hear that Democrats are pointing fingers, because we have a senator here, I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Bob Casey. Since the start of this year, he's been doing a lot of blaming everyone but himself for his voting record. So, to kick us off, first and foremost, I know that we've had multiple surprises this election cycle. The big October surprise was Kamala Harris sitting down for an interview with Bret Baier. So we were all in here. Tell us, what happened?
Yeah, so I watched the interview. I came in a little late because I sat in the car and watched the entire interview. My colleague Bret Baier, Kamala Harris. I encourage you to go home and watch it for yourself tonight or tomorrow. I want to be fair. I think that she had one or two pretty good moments. Overall, it was not good for her. It was not. He pressed her repeatedly in ways that she has literally never been pressed during this entire run for president on her part. And she simply did not have answers, ever, to a specific question. He would ask her something very specific, and she was unwilling and I think unable to grapple with those specifics at any point. There were a few really tough moments. He said, "You're accusing Donald Trump of being mentally and physically unfit to be president. However, you affirmed the capacity and capability of Joe Biden over and over again. At what point did you realize his capacity was diminished?" And there was a pause from her, and she eventually landed on, "Joe Biden isn't on the ballot," is what she eventually said. That was her answer. And then he said, but you spent a lot of time with him. You're the vice president. You met with him at least weekly. You never had any concerns? And she said, "I think the concerns are about Donald Trump." That was her answer. He tried to corner her on a number of her positions that she held very recently as a senator, as a presidential candidate, things that she proudly espoused. And her answer was, quote, "Well, that was 5 years ago." That just doesn't matter. There were a number of moments like that on immigration. Ooh, go and watch it. I think her people and the left's all angry. Bret Baier was rude. He talked over her too much because he wouldn't let her just filibuster with the answers we've heard, these meaningless word salads. He wouldn't let her do it. So they're mad about that. I think that she'll say, "Look, I went into the lion's den and I got feisty, and that's a win." I think the conservative side will say, "Look, she's a completely empty suit yet again, proven for the umpteenth time." The question is, how do independent, undecided voters who might see some of this, what are they going to think? And my colleague Britt Hume, right after the interview they brought him on, he said, "I don't think she answered a single question that an undecided voter might have about her in a positive way for her." So I tend to agree with